As you're ready, come on back. So, how may we serve this morning? We actually had one question during the week that came over email, and that question is, what is transmission? And that's a very interesting question. What we consider transmission to be is a sharing of energetic resource. Another way of saying that is a sharing of love, peace, joy, gratitude, and that which is beyond, which is what love, peace, joy, and gratitude point to. It is our understanding of humanity that the feeling nature, which is so often denied any priority in current popular culture, current culture, the feeling nature is really what allows us to go to God. We cannot think our way there, but we can sort of feel our way toward it by cultivating these experiences of love, peace, joy, gratitude, and that which is beyond. And the truth is that there is no experience that is outside of this realm. Every experience and every part of beingness is included in the whole. But to really have the perspective to be able to communicate inside self requires some access to the more positive states of being, because the negative states would have us give up in despair. And so, even though these states are included in our experience regularly, they aren't the focus of our attention in terms of spiritual evolution because they're more difficult. And so we use Ho'oponopono to integrate the more difficult into the easier side of experience. We'll just say easier, lighter side of experience. Nothing is outside the realm of the divine. Absolutely nothing. But as far as personal evolution, it's important for us to cultivate within ourselves the love, peace, joy, and gratitude, which gives us access to that which is beyond. But understand that that which is beyond and every step in our evolution in the positive is also a step in our total evolution, which means that our access to the polarity at the other end of the positive, which we would call negative just in relationship to each other, that access also becomes greater. So if you experience incredible ecstatic beingness, then don't be surprised when you experience suicidal depression. Because as long as you're dealing in the axis of polarities, these experiences will arise. And you can just understand them as reflections of each other. And the There is nothing untrue about any of it, but the focus of our attention begins to be in the center of it all. And we cultivate in our lives moderation because we understand that the extremes unbalance us. Because as we become more and more sensitive in our being, and we cultivate that sensitivity as part of our evolution and our expansion, as that happens, our tolerance for these extremes becomes less because we experience them so well. On the pain side, it's excruciating, and on the ecstatic side, it's so unbounded that it's ungroundedness. And so we learn that the middle road is the best place to be, because from the middle road, we have perspective. The perspective of the availability of the ecstatic and the perspective of the availability of the suicidal, homicidal, whatever we want to call that. That true evolution is complete awareness, not just one-sided. And it's actually, as we expand, it becomes a multidimensional experience. So we started with the idea of transmission. Let's go back there a little bit because we don't think we talked about it enough in the... So transmission is us bringing to you an experience that possibly might not otherwise be available. What we do is we shine the light of conscious awareness outward to make it more accessible to you while you are in contact with us. And it doesn't mean that we stop shining that light of awareness when we stop talking about it or when our program ends. It's just that in the conscious evolutionary awareness that you bring to this experience, it is much more accessible to you in our presence. And we hope to tune you to it so you begin to tune to it more regularly, because it has nothing to do with really the physicality that it's coming through. And we are not invested in any outcome that might manifest through you because of this sharing. So we give freely without any expectation of return, because it is in our nature to behave in that way from 12th dimensional awareness. And you're going to ask us what 12th dimensional awareness is, and we're going to tell you that your language cannot contain conceptually what 12th dimensional awareness is, but transmission experience can. It's not that it contains that awareness, but it allows the participation in that awareness. And from the participation in that awareness comes eventually we'll say appreciation is the first thing that happens. And then over time, some fundamental it just doesn't fit into language. We want to say clarity, but that's probably the best word we can find in your language to say what this fundamental awareness imparts to you over time. So that's what we would say about transmission. We hope that answers your question. How may we serve further this morning? Yes.
I can't see if anybody's typing or something going on, and I can't type to anybody, so they're going
Okay.
to,
So
they're gonna have to unmute and ask directly.
So I imagine you couldn't hear this, but Brenda this morning is unable to communicate with you through typing. So typing your questions will not work this morning. Please unmute yourself and we will have a conversation, whoever is interested in participating. That's the only way we can communicate this morning. So please, we welcome your questions and you. Anyone? Okay, well, we're still delighted to be here. Let's see if we can come up with another monologue. It would help to know what you're interested in. That would help enormously. We completely respect your privacy and right to choose, so we will not call on people because we love seeing your faces. Maggie, are you trying to unmute yourself and having trouble? Mm. She,
I've allowed participants to unmute themselves.
okay, you should be allowed to unmute yourself.
Let me see if I can,
Oh. Suzanne, are you unmuted? Can't hear you. No, can't hear you.
try this way. See if, okay, Maggie.
Yeah.
Maggie? Oh, yes, good.
Okay, good. So this is just to give you something to talk about. And hi, hello. So great
Hi.
to be here.
So happy to see you guys.
So if you could just talk a little bit about, I don't even know if I want to know how, but this notion of including really diverse points of view. And in particular, points of view that I don't agree with, and almost feel righteously indignant about that view even existing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually have some personal experience of this in recent history. Now, it's very personal, but we'll share it because it's part of Rebecca's evolution. And so recently, she has been studying astrology and reviewing the charts of her parents, with whom she had quite difficult relationships, both of them, and both in very different ways. But we'll give you an example of exactly that, what she considered a very hurtful and harmful experience in her life. So when she was 8 years old, she discovered competitive swimming. in a big way because her best friend wanted to go to be on the swimming team and asked her if she would go because she didn't want to go alone. So the two of them went and joined the swimming team. 3 weeks later, there was a swimming meet, and Rebecca won. She entered 3 events and she won all 3 and had 3 trophies and her picture in the paper at the age of 8. So this was a very powerful experience for her. And so she got really excited about being a competitive swimmer. And because her father worked for the college, she had access to the college swimming pool, the indoor pool, year round. And so went swimming most days, did not confide in her parents that she had a dream of being what she called a professional swimmer at that age, because she didn't know what that was. But due to the family dynamic, she didn't share that dream and with anybody in the family. So fast forward a few years, she continued working really hard, like often swimming in the pool till she was exhausted, and then practicing turns in whatever time was left. So she was working on, in many, many ways, perfecting what she was doing. So at the age of 11, her coach noticed that her times were getting close to Olympic times. And so he went to her father and said, she really should be evaluated by an Olympic coach and see if this is a real path for
At
her.
last.
And
Oh.
As a result of that, he said, "No daughter of mine will be a circus performer." And so that was the end. Brenda, we have,
I got it.
yeah, that was the end of the Olympic dream at the age of 11. So all her life, Rebecca has viewed this experience as a great obstruction and as his faulty matrix of belief, creating this complete obstruction in her life so that what she really wanted to happen and felt was destined to happen couldn't happen. Well, now, studying his astrological chart, it becomes obvious why he thought that. That was part of his matrix of belief. And actually, in his evolution, that was completely appropriate for him to believe that, because he actually made giant leaps in his own evolution in his life, but it led him to be this person who thought that it would be a huge limitation to have Rebecca put her energy into a sport when there were so many other talents that might be expressed. So, but he was not articulate enough in that moment to say it in that way, or to maybe even perceive it in that way. And certainly she's just been angry for decades about this. And then looking at my own chart with a bit of a different perspective, it was never to be. Olympic athlete was not to be in this life. It just wasn't to be. So wherever the obstruction came from, if it hadn't come from him, it would have come from somewhere else. It was just not to be. And having that understanding, that perspective, changes everything about the quality of the perception of that relationship in this moment. And so that's a long way around of answering your question. But the thing to understand is that we don't have the perspective to see the validity of the other perspectives of truth. And so we have to understand ourselves as beings of limited perception, that is informed by our matrix of belief. And the more we cultivate a bigger matrix of belief and dissolve the limitations in the crystallized emotional structures, like we'd say that was a pretty big crystallized emotional structure for Rebecca to finally get to dissolve at this late stage. But it takes that perspective to allow that to happen. And so all of that crystallized energy, that disappointment, that, feeling of rejection, that feeling of obstruction, that all of those negativities have melted away into the stream of understanding. And so we can begin to doubt the truth of our rigid evaluations that we put on other people around us and their belief system. And just having that little room of doubt can allow us to begin to be bigger in our receptivity of allowing diversity. Because really what we're talking about is being available to diversity, even if we don't agree with it. And to entertain ideas that are bigger than our matrix of belief. That maybe there is room for diversity in all kinds of ways. And, although we would hang on to our political beliefs and fight for them, we would go to war for them. That doesn't mean that they're wrong or right. They just are. And when we understand that from a bigger context, there has to be a middle road in there. There has to be. And as we look for that middle road and cultivate that in ourselves, at least we can listen. We don't just shut our ears to the opposition, however painful it may be. But we have the humility to recognize that our own perspective is limited. That's what we'll say. That our matrix of belief, even though we cling to it with everything we have and identify with it as the truth in capital letters, we understand as we feel more and more deeply into ourselves and what truth is, we begin to understand that truth itself has a feeling to it that we recognize when we experience it. And again, this is along the lines of what a transmission is. It's that as we feel deeper and deeper into ourselves for the truth of life, the truth of source, the truth of union with source, as we feel into that, we begin to evolve our awareness into something bigger and finer. And we witness ourselves in judgment and can sometimes allow a suspension of that judgment to honor the diversity that surrounds us. And that's plenty. That's a lot. Just to be able to do that. That's not a just. Doing that makes us a bigger person, period. And so we will all notice it's painful to do this. Humility itself has an aspect of pain as we recognize that our matrix of belief is itself a set of limitations. And as we examine it further and allow these limitations to dissolve around us, then we understand that our view is limited and that cultivating this alignment with Source will take us to some greater truths within ourselves. And this diversity, understood from that perspective, is the perfection of all parts are welcome. Because truly realized beings, which we are not pretending to be for a moment, but truly realized beings would not change a thing about how the universe is, how the multiverse is, because from that pure perspective, everything is perfect, just as it is, behaving just as was meant. So we hope that answers your question in a big way, in a small way. Thank you. We really appreciate that. How may we serve further? Suzanne, you had a question. You still look muted to us.
Hold on, let's see if I can.
We're working on it.
Oh, got it.
There you are.
Well, I think I've lost that question in just this wonderful last part that you were presenting, but let me raise something here. It was your very last statement I would like to have elaborated on a little bit, that beings would not change a thing as the universe is. And I may not have gotten all that quite right, but
You got it quite right. You got it quite right. How to elaborate on that? Here's what we'll say. Life itself has inherent within it everything that is needed. Human beings are organized in such a way that they are presented in life with exactly what they need to over time compel them to seek union with Source. And that is the true fundamental purpose of every blueprint. And the fundamental purpose of every life, no matter how many lives or blueprints it takes for the realization of that union and alignment. And so it is the never-ending play of self-discovery, discovering itself, revealing itself, dissolving back into non-self, forming again into self. The play of consciousness, again, in limitation, revealing itself to self over time, self revealed, dissolved, reformed, play of consciousness, revealing itself again. And this is life. And we can see it in everything within and around us when we look from that perspective. What is living is dying. What is dying is living. What is living is dying. What is dying is living. This enacts itself within and throughout our bodies, within and throughout all living things in our environment. And it is the way of all of it. The Tao, the way. Living and dying are the same. Samsara and nirvana are the same. Union with source and separation from source are the same. It's an issue of recognition. And so when we feel into these eternal truths, then there is a kind of peace that everything is as it should be. And the humility to recognize that we control basically none of it. And the only potential control that we can have is inside ourselves. And as we use our tools to expand our awareness of who and what we are, then perspective, clarity, awareness, these things begin to assert themselves over time. And that equanimity becomes a stalwart place within us. Does that answer your question?
It gives me a lot to think about. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hmm. How may we serve further this morning?
Drew shared my phone number, so anybody could text me with questions.
Oh, great.
They can all see.
So Drew just sent Brenda's phone number to everyone. So if you want to text her a question, you can. Hi, David. We're working on it. There you are.
It's good. All right, I got two questions bubbling, and you can decide what you want to talk about. So I'm still in this inquiry about time and space, and mostly time, and this agreement that we have that, we're going to mark the hours. The sun's going to come up, the sun's going to come down, we're going to mark the hours, and that's going to create this time. And so, but it's all happening all at the same time. So, our past and our future and all that is all occurring at the same time, which is hard to get your hands around. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And then my second question is, I'm noticing that I have a lot of questioning of, things I kind of held dear in the past, like media. I'm now finding myself extremely distrustful of news sources that I would have thought was reliable in the past. Extremely distrustful of the medical profession, the CDC, the World Health Organization, uh, things that we held as kind of pillars of our, agreement to be good humans on the planet. And I'm finding that that's a bit of a struggle for me right now. And I find that I'm kind of railing against the machine at the moment. I don't know if that's productive or healthy. So I'll let you speak to that. Either one of those.
Okay,
Softball questions.
so we'll start with time. So as you know, we don't have time, but we understand time. And the reason we say that is beyond three-dimensional reality. Time is not, it's not relevant in such a way. It's relevant when you have a body, because your body has a timeline. It will cease to exist at a certain moment, which is predetermined but unknown to us as human beings. So that's one of the reasons that human beings have time, is because the life appears to be finite. So we're going to say to that what's alive about you never dies. And so that is the realm of timelessness, which is again source energy. And so when that alignment is complete, even for a second, you will understand time and timeless. Because once there's no body, there's no time. So it's hard to imagine what we are without a body. It's hard from the perspective of a body. But sometimes in meditation, that experience just comes. And yes, there is only the now moment. And when we experience ourselves as timeless, then the three times, past, present, and future, become one now. And we can get there in two ways. We can sit in the now moment and realize that it is a condensation of past, present, and future, which can take us to timeless. There is the transmission of the timeless experience. And then the fundamental key is the allowing of the timeless experience. Because allowing the timeless experiences challenges everything about our matrix of belief. Because we have to understand that this body is finite and kind of allow ourselves to drop into the infinite to experience timeless. And that requires a good deal of allowing. It's not hard, it's simple. It requires allowing. And so it's dropping ourselves through the tiny crack of awareness inside ourselves into the experience of the all that is. Yes. So the second question, questioning everything around us, the validity of what we're being told by media, by institution, by well, we can tell you Rebecca is experiencing same. And we don't know what that means, really. It's too in the now to have context in greater perspective. But it feels, there is the sense of being manipulated and information being manipulated, and you can't tell who's doing what to whom, and it's all very difficult to comprehend because the center is not clearly visible. We'll say that. And so we're right there with you. And it's hard to see. It's hard to see who's doing what to whom and for what and why. And, where do we put our energy in terms of leveraging the whole toward making it better for everybody. So all we know is one thing. The more we invest ourselves in internal investigation, evolution, and expansion, the clearer of our sense of how to participate in the highest best for the whole just emerges in a moment to moment basis so that we know how to participate. And that's the best we can do in terms of informing you about where to put your attention and your energy as this moves forward, because external clarity is not something that is easy to find at this moment. It seems that at times like when our parents were alive and their parents were alive, that things were much simpler. And now, because of the complexity of communication and the complexity of drivers and the hidden drivers of what's happening now, it's just not clear. So all we can do is our inner work and participate as best as we can, as best as we can see. We do the highest best in everything we do. And this is a continuous process of evolution that the entire of everything is in. We in Annassa are still evolving and expanding and refining. Every part of the universe, the multiverse, is participating in this way. So it is actually a tribute to our expansion that we are aware of the complexity and engaged in the questioning of what the true motives and agendas and purpose is, trying to play out in our world. That's about the best we can do with that question in this moment. We're sorry not to have a simpler, clear answer. But the simplicity is in the internal direction, and the knowing that will come that will inform this moment. And that happens over and over with every moment. Thank you so much. We appreciate the continuing in context to expand. We know you've been thinking about this some time now. We value that enormously. How may we serve further?
I'm going to unmute Dina. I think she was, I'm going to ask her to unmute. If she was,
Dina, please unmute.
if you were interested in asking a question.
If you're interested in asking a question, please unmute. We'd love to hear from you. You may be covered from our screen.
Hi, I don't have a question. I'm enjoying this very much. I had to drop
great.
out briefly because my battery died, but I'll try to think of a question. Thank you so much.
So happy to hear your voice.
Yes, likewise.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
How may we serve further? Andrew?
This is a slightly abstract question about if, and the purpose of patience within this field of no time.
So Andrew's asking about the purpose of patience within this no time. Well, we're going to answer that in a little different way, because what we notice about human beings is when they get themselves in trouble is when they act out of a sense of urgency when there is no threat in the environment. Now, of course, when there is something to be afraid of in your environment, when there is an urgent response required, we want you to be aware and take care of your survival. But most of the time, when people experience urgency in expressing their opinion, is the number one way that this happens. And, urgency to do something about something from an emotion that's not one that you would always want to share with your environment. And this feeling of urgency often gets people in trouble because they act prematurely about something that they have not yet digested. And so, in those moments that we feel great urgency to change our lives or to engage in a conversation or to do something about something, we encourage you to instead step back and be self-reflective about what it is that you truly want to express and have the time and patience to sit with yourself and use Ho'oponopono, use your discrimination to understand when is the best time and what is the best action. So we've, in a way, instead of addressing the role of patience in stillness, which is what we think you asked about, which is a very different question from when to be patient in life and when to take time to examine before acting. So now we'll go deeper into this question of the role of patience as one is sitting in the now moment, which we think is your question. So when you're sitting in the now moment that contains past, present, and future, just to be there requires discipline. To be there in the now moment requires some discipline because everything will arise to distract you. So if you're able to expand in the now moment and just be there, we'll say when. So what happens is there will eventually be an impulse to say or do. And the best advice is to wait, be patient for the impulse that feels true. There will be truth to every impulse, some truth, but when you wait and wait and wait for the wave that encompasses the whole, And then you allow it to take the time to inform the whole of your being. And as that information filters through, you allow. This is the place of patience. You allow it to continue to filter until there is a feeling of completion. And that feeling of completion is itself outside of time, which means that you allow 2 months, 2 years, 6 months, 6 years. There is no time in that allowing. And you wait for the completion of that wave. And then the clarity will arise to guide you into action or to keep you in inaction, whichever is the most powerful. Because understand, as we engage in infinite resource, that infinite resource is power beyond imagination. We think that what arises in front of us has to do with our effort. If we look deeply into it, we will see that our effort has little to do with what arises in our experience. And it's that cause and effect incongruity that brings us to spirituality in the first place, many of us. Because when you watch it long enough, you understand that the system of rewards and punishments just cycles on itself and it doesn't really go anywhere. But when you sink into timelessness and ask to be informed, then you must have the patience to allow the answer to take its time to articulate itself to you, to and through you. And we know that's not
Well, in stillness itself, there's no impatience.
right. There is only stillness.
And presumably if one is good at this, then it's never an issue of impatience because, you know.
Well, let's talk a bit about being good at sitting in source energy. Understanding that source energy is the power of the universe in stillness. Because stillness is not dead. Stillness is very potent and alive. And so there's the experience of being in an atomic reactor, something like that. Not that we can even imagine what that experience is. But there is a sense of dissolution of all, and yet enormous power in the same moment. Dynamic stillness, our friend called it. Quite appropriately and understated. So that experience itself changes you totally. And the beauty of this is that it is our curiosity that allows us to experience ever greater and greater evolutionary energies, we'll say, for want of a better word. Evolutionary waves of experience, because waves of experience are constantly coming in and through us. We love your questions today. They're taking us so deeply into experience, and we are quite hopeful that you're following into these experiences with us. We're so happy for this. We do have time for one more question. Or we can move toward meditation. We're happy to do either. Okay, let's move into meditation. So this meditation will be transmission. And so because when we transmit, it's much easier for us to do it in silence. We are going to encourage you to use I am that as a mantra, just to stabilize your mind. And you can use it as you feel through yourself into each of the energy centers, or as you feel into the flow between the energy centers, or as you just center yourself in your heart and be with us. All of those choices are available to you. We would encourage you to pick one of them to stabilize your mind and enter the transmission field with us. So we'll begin our meditation and our transmission. We have so completely enjoyed being with you today. We are so honored that you choose to spend your time with us and delighted to be here with you. Thank you so, so much. We bow to your work. So much love to you all. Till next week or Wednesday night, whichever happens next. So much love.